A couple weeks ago, I shared with you the unboxing and setup of an Audio-Technica LP120XUSB turntable. And today, I'm really excited to share with you the results of some tests that I did on that turntable. Many people getting into playing 78 RPM records on modern turntables are confronted with the question of what stylus to use and what settings to use when they digitize their records. And so today I am testing out different stylus sizes and different methods of digitizing from the LP120. I think you'll find it interesting. Hopefully you'll find it instructive. You can learn from some of my mistakes, and at the end of this video I've got 3 records that I have digitized in 4 different ways that we can listen to together to hear the differences in sound. The LP20 has 2 types of output that we're going to talk about. The first is a simple old-school analog line output via 2 RCA connectors and a ground cable. If you wanted, for example, to hook the LP20 to a vintage stereo receiver with a built-in phono preamp, this is what you would use. When you want to use the RCA analog outputs, you should have the switch on the LP20 set to line. The reason we call it line output is that no gain or equalization is applied to the signal. We're taking the raw analog signal from the cartridge and sending it through without any sort of equalization filter, gain stage, or other coloration to the sound. This gives you the truest source signal. You can also use this line output setting if you have a phono preamplifier and a digital audio converter that you already use for making digital transfers. For the samples you're going to hear in this video, I ran the line outputs into my phono preamplifier, then into my Volt 4 digital audio converter, and then into my computer. The benefits of bringing in analog signal that has not been tampered with is that you get the truest signal. I'll note that my Volt 4 inputs are line level and do not apply any gain stage to the signal before it reaches my computer. So my source material at the computer is as close to the original as possible, other than the equalization applied by the phono preamplifier. However, there is a second output type which seems more convenient and straightforward, and that is taking a digital signal from the USB output with the switch set to phono. This setting applies phono preamplification to your signal inside the turntable itself and digitizes that signal so that it can be output directly to your computer. This output is super simple. It's just a single USB cable from your LP120 turntable right into your computer. One thing to note is that the turntable seems to apply a gain stage to the signal, and it almost seems to normalize the audio to very high volume levels. I tried to find a way to control this, but was unsuccessful. It was all or nothing. Now, it did not clip the signal at all, which was one of my main worries, but I didn't like that you didn't really have a choice with how much gain was being applied to the incoming signal. Once it is peaked, there's not really much you can do. To show you how this sounds, I'm going to play you the raw sound files from a USB capture and a line capture so that you can hear just how hot the USB output signal is in comparison. You can clearly hear the USB signal is super hot and levels are peaked. Now, for most people who just want a quick, easy digital file, the USB output may just be fine. It sounds okay, it works great. But as someone doing somewhat archival work with these older records, who often does a lot of tweaking to settings in post-production, being handed a peaked normalized file with ultra-high levels is not ideal for me. Next, I'd like to talk about the cartridge and, more importantly, the stylus. The LP120 comes with a stylus that is made for microgroove playback. That makes it ideal for playing 45 RPM and 33 1/3 RPM vinyl records. However, this is not an ideal stylus for playing 78s. This is because the grooves of a 78 RPM record are much wider than grooves on a microgroove record. For 78 RPM playback, you really want to use a stylus that is anywhere from 2.5 mil to 4 mil, with 3 mil being an ideal size that works for most 78s. Now, the cartridge that comes with the LP20 has a 0.3 by 0.7 mil elliptical stylus. So that is quite small and not ideal for capturing the full range of sound from a 78 RPM record. I knew there must be a 3 mil stylus for this cartridge, which I believed to be the AT-95E. And sure enough, when I did a search on my favorite place to buy stylii, Voice of Music, there was a 3 mil diamond replacement stylus that would fit the AT-95E. So I bought it. However, when I got the stylus, the shape did not look the same as the stylus on the cartridge. And that's when I realized that the cartridge that came with this LP120 was not an AT-95E. It was an AT-VM95E. After asking Gary at Voice of Music what the deal was, he informed me that the newer LP120s now came with an AT-VM95E cartridge and that there was currently no 3 mil stylus replacements available for it. Since I already had a 3 mil stylus for the older AT-95E, his advice was to just go find one of those. So I took his advice and hopped on eBay, and I found a reasonably priced AT-95E cartridge that would work with the 3 mil stylus that I'd already bought. So now I have both an AT-95E fitted with a 3 mil stylus for 78 RPM playback and a stock AT-VM95E fitted with a stylus suitable for microgroove playback. And that's cool because switching cartridges is easier and safer than constantly switching stylii. The only problem is this. When I weighed each cartridge, they did not weigh the same amount. Now, why is this important? Because remember, we set up the tone arm based on the weight of the LP cartridge. If we then switch and put on the lighter 78 cartridge, the decreased weight will also result in a decreased tracking force, and that throws our balance off. The resolution that I came to is this. Let's say that I set up the tone arm balance using the LP cartridge and set the tracking force to 2 grams. If I then switch to use the 78 cartridge, I simply have to increase the tracking force by 1.2 grams to 3.2 grams. While it now looks like there's a whole lot more tracking force present, remember this is because I set the balance based on a heavier cartridge. And if I happen to set the tone arm balance based on the lighter cartridge, it just means if I switch to the heavier cartridge, I have to compensate 1.2 grams in the opposite direction to 0.8 grams. All of which is to say, with the 2 different cartridges and the 2 different output settings, there are 4 different configurations I wanted to test. Now, some may be questioning why I want to use the LP stylus on 78s. And this is simply because I know a lot of people just get a turntable and never really think about stylus size and just play records. And they may never consider changing their stylus. So I wanted to see what the difference was in sound between the 2 different stylus sizes, and perhaps based on what you hear, someone using an LP-sized stylus will want to upgrade to one designed for 78 playback, or maybe not. I also wanted to compare the USB digital output from the turntable with the analog line output. So in my test, I used 3 different records. One more modern 78 from Africa, one electrically recorded disc from the heyday of the 78 RPM era, and one acoustically recorded disc in poorer condition with some scratches. I felt this would give us a good idea of the differences across these different types of records. So what you're about to hear is the digital output with the addition of an equalization correction, the same correction applied equally to all versions, and a gain adjustment so that the relative volumes of each would be matched. I did not do any declicking, so you're going to hear the raw pops and ticks associated with unfiltered playback. So please sit back, enjoy, and take a listen. And I encourage you to use headphones if you have them, as you'll hear the differences a little more clearly. Let me know in the comments what differences you perceive.
So dip your brush in the sunshine and keep on fading away. Make love a duty and you will find beauty wherever your eyes may stray. Life will seem worthwhile living and skies will never be gray. So dip your brush in the sunshine and keep on painting away. Just keep on painting away. Just keep on fading away.
So I'm really curious as to what your thoughts were after hearing those sound samples. So let me know in the comments, pause the video, take your time, tell me what you thought of the differences in these different methodologies. I'll wait.
A few moments later.
One thing you probably noticed right away is the higher noise floor of the LP stylus. And remember, the LP stylus is quite a bit thinner than a 78 stylus, so it's dragging along the bottom of the groove, picking up all the noise, and also not getting maybe as much motion as a more snug fitting groove might. So what I notice are the bass frequencies are slightly attenuated when listening to a 78 with with an LP stylus, and the noise floor is a lot higher. Now on the positive side, you do get those hyped up higher frequencies, which can make it sound a little crisper and maybe more lifelike or lively, but at the expense of an extremely high noise floor. And if you are going to try to adjust for that noise, it's just like putting a wet blanket over all those high frequencies. They'll just get muddy again in no time at all. So the trade-off is, do you want a little crispier sound that might have a little bit more liveliness to it at the expense of that constant grating noise? So if you are currently using a turntable with a microgroove stylus, you might consider getting a replacement stylus that is made for 78 grooves. And generally, the width of those styluses can be anywhere from 1.8 mil to 4 mil in some cases. Really serious collectors literally will have a set of 4 or 5 different cartridges, each with its own sized stylus that they can easily put on and off as their playing a record to find which one does a better job on a particular record. I use generally for all of my transfers a 3mm stylus, and I just don't have the budget to buy more cartridges and more stylii, and then I don't have the time to sit there and test out 3 or 4 different stylii on each record. I think 2.5 to 3 mil is a pretty good average size that's going to sound great for most records. If you have a highly damaged record, or in certain other cases where the grooves might have suffered a little from a steel needle, varying the stylus size can improve the sound. We all have to decide for ourselves just how far down the rabbit hole we want to go with stylus size. But hopefully you heard for yourself that the 3mm stylus had a much cleaner sound to it. And even though some of those higher frequencies are not quite as crisp, that's also something you can go in with an EQ filter in a DAW and adjust for. So the other thing to keep in mind is when you're listening to this, this is just the raw transfer with some EQ to adjust for the RIAA equalization applied to it by the phono preamp. But again, if I were going to produce these for the channel, the next step would be to go in and tweak the EQ to try to get those sounds coming out. If there's a bass and you can't hear it, or a tuba, you can't really hear it too well, I'm going to bring those frequencies up. If the high frequencies don't sound very crisp, I'm going to selectively go in and try to find where to accentuate and attenuate frequencies to get it to sound its best. So all in all, I think it was a good test. I didn't notice as big of a difference between the line out signal and the audio out RCA signal. So let me know what you thought about that. I'm going to continue to primarily use the RCA analog outputs and then adjust gain in my DAW, just because I like to have more control over headroom. So hopefully you enjoyed this deep dive into the Audio-Technica LP120XUSB turntable, which again is now no longer here in the Jazz Bunker, but instead with its very happy new owner who is enjoying it very much. So thanks for hanging out with me and listening to all these tests. Hope you enjoyed it.